Imagine you're standing out in this vast empty field, and beside you is this massive pile of heavy steel rails and wooden ties.
Okay, like you're about to build something big.
Right. Your goal is to build a railroad all the way to the horizon. And that railroad, it represents whatever new complex skill you, the listener, are trying to learn right now.
So maybe you're trying to pick up new language or, I don't know, maybe you're learning to code or figuring out some complicated new software for work.
Yeah, exactly. And most of us look at that massive pile of steel, get completely overwhelmed, and we try to lay a mile of track in a single exhausting weekend.
Oh yeah, the classic weekend cram session.
Right. And then we just give up because we're all looking for the secret to making the knowledge actually stick in our brains, without burning out in the process.
Well, we culturally glorify the sprints, don't we? We had this pervasive idea that learning requires locking yourself in a room, chugging coffee, and just cramming complex theory into your head for 5 hours straight.
It never works, though.
No, because the human brain simply isn't designed to absorb information that way, which is why that approach usually results in, well, just frustration rather than actual retention.
So true. So today we're going to look at a radically different approach. We're doing a deep dive into how simple, entirely mundane daily routines and habits can be engineered into this highly sophisticated framework for learning.
I love this topic.
It's so good. Our source material today is a transcript from an educational channel called Education Master. Specifically, we are looking at an excerpt titled Mastering English Through Daily Routines and Habits, and it features a conversation between two characters, Jamie and Imley.
And on the surface, if you just glance at this, it really just looks like a very basic introductory English dialogue.
It totally does. But our mission today is to decode this transcript, not just as a casual conversation, but as a literal masterclass in educational methodology.
Right, getting to the actual machinery underneath it all.
Exactly. We're going to extract exactly how Jamie and Emily use the incredibly ordinary details of everyday life to teach complex language skills. Okay, let's unpack this.
Oh, to understand the final product, the actual educational output that these two produce, we really have to look at the psychological foundation they're building.
It makes sense. Where do they start?
In this source material, they establish that foundation by starting exactly where the day begins. They literally map out the fundamental architecture of a morning.
Yeah, they establish this fascinating baseline right out of the gate. Emily tells us she wakes up at 6 a.m. every day, specifically noting that she finds the early morning peaceful.
Which is a nice, relatable detail.
Right, and she follows that up with some stretching and doing yoga at 6:30 a.m. Now, Jamie, on the other hand, operates on a slightly different schedule. He wakes up at 7 a.m.
A bit more of a realistic time for a lot of people, probably.
Yeah, exactly. But what struck me is that despite the time difference, they immediately highlight their shared foundational habits. Like, they both explicitly note that the very first things they do are drink a glass of water and brush their teeth.
Right, because it establishes a universal rhythm. Before introducing any complex grammatical structures or advanced vocabulary, they are grounding the conversation in biological necessities that literally every single human being on Earth shares.
Which they carry right into breakfast at 7:30 a.m. And again, they provide distinct but highly relatable choices. Like, Emily usually eats eggs and bread.
Okay, classic.
Yeah, and Jamie likes fruit and oatmeal. And he makes a very specific point to say that breakfast is crucial because it gives them energy for the morning.
Which is such a universal truth.
Totally. Now, as I was reading this, I kept thinking about my own morning routine, and I want you, the listener, to think about yours right now, too. When you're making your coffee or brushing your teeth or staring out the window at 7 a.m., you aren't spending a lot of mental energy, right?
No, it's completely automatic. You could do it in your sleep.
Exactly. So I started viewing this part of the transcript as a mental coat rack.
Oh, I like that. Let's explore that analogy. How does the coat rack function here?
Well, think about building a house. You don't start by putting the roof on, right? You start with a solid foundation. Or, to use the coat rack idea, you have to build the wooden pegs before you can hang anything up.
You need the structure first.
Yeah. So, by talking about waking up, brushing teeth, and eating breakfast, Jamie and Emily are giving their students universally relatable structural moments. Those moments are the wooden pegs.
And the new, unfamiliar English vocabulary words are the coats.
You got it. They're giving you a sturdy, familiar place to hang the new information.
What's fascinating here is the underlying cognitive mechanics at play. specifically a concept known as cognitive load.
Okay, break that down for us.
So in educational psychology, cognitive load refers to the amount of working memory your brain is using at any given second. You can think of your working memory kind of like the RAM in a computer.
Oh, okay, so like when things start glitching out.
Exactly. If you open up 50 internet browser tabs all at once, your computer's RAM gets maxed out, the fan starts spinning really loudly, and the whole system just freezes.
I have definitely felt my brain's fan spinning when trying to read a dense textbook.
Oh, we all have. It's awful. If you're trying to learn a new language, your brain's RAM is already heavily taxed just trying to process the unfamiliar sounds, the new vocabulary, and the foreign syntax.
It's working overtime just on the basics.
Right. Now imagine if Jamie and Imlay decided to teach English by discussing macroeconomics or quantum physics.
Oh, wow. That would be a nightmare.
It would. As a student, you'd have to use half of your RAM just to understand the complex concept of the physics, which leaves very little processing power to decode the new language. The cognitive load would be completely overwhelming.
The browser would crash.
The browser would absolutely crash.
So by talking about eggs and oatmeal, they're deliberately keeping the conceptual tabs closed.
Yes. By discussing universally shared human habits, drinking water, brushing teeth, eating breakfast, the source material ensures the listener isn't struggling to understand the underlying concept at all.
Because you already know what a morning is.
Exactly. You, as the listener, know what breakfast is. The conceptual load is practically zero. So this brilliantly frees up almost all of your brain's available RAM to focus entirely on the language itself.
Just the grammar, the pronunciation, the vocabulary.
Exactly. It's an act of intentional, highly strategic simplicity.
Wow. That reframes the entire dialogue for me. You aren't learning what breakfast is, you're purely learning the label for it.
Precisely.
But I do have to push back a little here, or at least, ask the question. If I'm an adult learner, I know what brushing my teeth is. Does starting with such incredibly basic, repetitive actions risk boring the learner?
That's a fair question.
Like if I tune in to learn a language and the hosts are talking about drinking a glass of water, am I just going to tune out?
Well, that is a risk if the delivery is monotonous, sure. But the repetition of the mundane is actually the secret sauce to language acquisition. Familiarity breeds comprehension.
How so?
When you hear a new word attached to an action you physically perform every single day, you create a direct, visceral neural pathway.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So tomorrow morning when you turn on your own faucet to brush your teeth, your brain will automatically trigger the new vocabulary word because the physical action acts as a memory retrieval cue.
The coat rack is already built in my bathroom. I just have to hang the new coat on it.
Exactly.
And that energy they get from breakfast, the oatmeal and the eggs, it transitions us perfectly into the next phase of their day, which is entirely about how they channel that energy into output.
Right. The narrative flows directly from the foundation of the morning to the creative engine of the afternoon, from how they prepare their minds for the day to what they actually produce for their viewers.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because they pull back the curtain on what it actually takes to run Education Master.
It's a lot more than you'd think.
It is. After their 7.30 breakfast, they dive into their workday. And it's a dense block of productivity. They talk about spending many hours creating lessons for their viewers. They're writing scripts.
Recording audio conversations.
Yeah, just like the deep dive we're doing right now. And they're making interactive quizzes. They're generating English practice videos. And they accomplish all of this before they sit down for a shared lunch at 1 p.m.
Which really highlights the sheer volume of distinct media formats they're juggling simultaneously.
I kept thinking of their channel like the kitchen of a busy high-end restaurant.
Okay, I can see that.
Because Jamie explicitly states that their ultimate goal is simple. He says they want to, quote, help people learn English easily. So the final dish served to the customer, that feeling of easy learning, looks elegant and effortless.
But the kitchen is chaotic.
Exactly. If you walk into the back of the house, the kitchen features all these incredibly complex, distinct stations. You have the scripting station over here, the audio recording booth over there, the interactive quiz building station in the corner. It's a massive, highly coordinated operation required to produce that feeling of simplicity.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of educational methodology, what Jamie and Emily are actually describing is the pedagogy of multimodal learning.
Break that down for us. What does multimodal actually mean in practice?
It's the psychological framework built on the idea that people encode and retain information most effectively when it's presented through multiple different sensory channels.
Like different learning styles.
Right. Think about how you learn best. Some students are highly visual, They need to see the text on the screen or watch the practice videos to make the connection.
Yeah, that's me. I need to see it written down.
Same here. But other students are auditory learners, right? They need to listen to the audio conversations while they commute to work or wash the dishes.
Oh,
And still, others need active kinetic engagement. They have to physically click the buttons on a quiz to test themselves and force active recall.
so they aren't just throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. They're systematically building different doors into the exact same house.
Beautifully put. By creating audio, visual, and interactive elements, they're catering to a highly diverse set of neurological preferences. They're ensuring that no matter how your specific brain prefers to encode information, Education Master has a format that reduces friction for you.
But looking at that massive kitchen operation, they run the scripts, the audio, the videos, the quizzes. I have to wonder, are they risking burnout?
It's a lot of output.
Yeah. Are Jamie and Emily prioritizing the sheer quantity of content over deep, focused engagement with their students? Because producing that much media every single morning seems like a recipe for a channel that is a mile wide but an inch deep.
Well, that is where their afternoon cool-down routines become a vital piece of the puzzle.
What do they do?
After that intense work block and their 1 p.m. lunch, they diverge in how they decompress. Emily will sometimes relax or read a book to recharge.
Sounds nice.
Yeah. Jamie, however, spends his afternoon checking messages and comments. And he explicitly says, "We love reading comments from our audience."
But is that just about feeling good or collecting internet likes?
No, not at all. This serves a massive function in a teaching framework.
What function is that?
It acts as an indispensable real-time feedback loop. See, when you're teaching asynchronously over the internet, meaning you aren't in a live classroom, you can't see your students' faces. You
Right.
can't see their eyes glaze over when a concept is too difficult, and you can't see them looking confused. Those comments are the only telemetry Jamie and Emily have to know if their multimodal approach is actually working.
It's the only way the kitchen knows if the customers actually like the food.
Precisely. It allows them to continuously calibrate their teaching methods. If they notice 50 comments asking for clarification on a specific verb tense, they know they need to adjust their scripting for the next day.
Oh, wow. So they're basically crowdsourcing the lesson plan.
Yeah, they're essentially letting the students co-write the curriculum through their feedback. And that ensures the sheer quantity of content remains deeply tethered to the actual needs of the learners.
That's brilliant. So we've seen the morning foundation, which lowers the cognitive load. We've seen the intense multimodal production of the workday calibrated by audience feedback.
And then we transition into the evening.
Right. Now we transition into the final segments of the transcript. This is where the physical day winds down, but cleverly, this is exactly where the source material confronts the biggest roadblock any adult learner faces: the fear of failure.
Yes, the transition from the workday to the evening demonstrates that language learning, or mastering any skill really, isn't a compartmentalized task that ends when you close your textbook.
It's a lifestyle.
It's a continuous thread woven into the evening routine.
Let's track how they spend those evening hours. Jamie hits the gym at 6 p.m. Emily prefers going for a walk, noting that exercise helps them stay healthy.
Both great habits.
Definitely. Then at 7:30 p.m., Emily enjoys cooking dinner, while Jamie talks about eating simple food like rice and vegetables.
Keeping it simple.
Yeah. And then we get to their bedtimes. Emily likes to listen to music and goes to bed at 10:30 p.m. Jamie might watch a movie or read a book, and he goes to sleep at 11 p.m.
It's a very serene, very human wind down.
It really is. But right before they sign off, they deliver their core pedagogical advice.
They lay out the ultimate thesis of their channel.
Jamie starts by stating clearly learning English takes time. Emily follows up with, but if you practice every day, you will improve.
That daily consistency is key.
Right. They instruct the listener to listen to audio in the morning or the evening, to physically repeat sentences out loud, and to practice speaking. And fundamentally, Jamie ends the entire conversation with this directive: and don't be afraid to make mistakes.
A powerful note to end on.
So what does this all mean for us?
Well, it means they're outlining a philosophy of endurance over intensity.
It takes me back to the idea of laying down those train tracks. If you want to build a railroad across the country, you don't do it in a weekend sprint.
No, you'd never make it.
You commit to laying down a few pieces of steel every single day. Language learning requires consistent, small repetitions rather than occasional, intense cramming sessions.
Absolutely. The daily practice, even if it feels agonizingly slow and mundane on a Tuesday afternoon, it compounds over time into fluency.
But I want to ask you about that final piece of advice from Jamie. Don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Okay.
We hear this from literally every teacher, mentor, and coach. And I have to be honest, it often sounds like a warm, fuzzy platitude designed just to make students feel better about failing.
It can definitely feel that way sometimes.
Like, I remember being in Paris a few years ago. I had studied French for months. I knew the exact vocabulary to order a coffee.
Oh no, I know where this is going.
Yeah. When I got to the front of the line at this busy cafe, the barista looked at me, my heart started pounding, my palms got sweaty, and I completely froze. I was terrified of sounding stupid, so I just pointed at a menu and mumbled in English.
We've all been there.
It's the worst. So, is there a functional neurological reason that educators almost always end their lessons by telling us not to fear mistakes?
This raises an important question about the emotional state of the learner. And what you experienced in Paris is a textbook example of a biological mechanism literally blocking education.
Really? A biological block?
Yes. In linguistics and educational psychology, there is a concept called the affective filter. You can visualize it as an invisible emotional shield that exists in every student's mind.
How does that shield actually operate?
It is tied directly to your amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for processing fear and the fight or flight response.
Oh, so when I was terrified of the barista.
Exactly. When a student is anxious, when they're stressed, or when they are terrified of looking foolish in front of a Parisian barista, the amygdala essentially hijacks the brain's resources.
Wow.
That affective filter goes up. It acts like a thick brick wall. And when that wall is up, comprehensible input, even if it is perfectly structured, multimodal learning literally cannot reach the language acquisition center of the brain.
It just bounces right off.
The student physically cannot learn or recall information because their brain is prioritizing survival over education.
So fear biologically short-circuits the learning process. The RAM is completely consumed by panic.
Yes. Therefore, don't be afraid to make mistakes is not a soft platitude. It's a vital functional instruction to lower the affective filter.
That makes so much sense.
If the student doesn't feel safe to fail, the entire multimodal kitchen operation we discussed earlier is completely useless. The food is being served, but the dining room doors are locked.
Wow.
And look at the brilliant psychological framing Jamie and Emily use to achieve this in the transcript.
You mean by sharing their daily routines?
Think about how they spent the entire conversation leading up to that final piece of advice. They didn't present themselves as untouchable, perfect academics operating on some higher intellectual plane.
No, they were talking about oatmeal and brushing their teeth.
They spent the whole transcript detailing their own highly mundane, regular lives. They eat simple rice and vegetables, they go for walks, they listen to music and go to sleep at normal hours.
So they're leveling the playing field.
By humanizing themselves so thoroughly, they bridge the psychological gap between teacher and student. They aren't speaking down to you from a pedestal. They're speaking peer-to-peer.
By showing that they're just normal people who eat eggs for breakfast, they are signaling to the student that it's a safe space.
The exact.
So when they finally tell you not to feel mistakes, you actually believe them. The emotional barrier drops because the student feels a sense of kinship with the teachers.
Yes.
That is so incredibly subtle but powerful. They spend the whole day building trust just so that final piece of advice will actually be absorbed.
It truly is a masterclass in educational psychology, cleverly disguised as a casual chat about oatmeal and bedtimes.
That's amazing. Let's take a step back and distill what we've actually uncovered here from the Education Master transcript.
Let's do it.
We started by looking at how they map out the morning routine. And we saw how chronological scaffolding, building that mental coat rack out of universal habits like drinking water and brushing teeth, drastically lowers the cognitive load.
Right. It prevents the brain's RAM from crashing by giving the student a familiar conceptual structure to hang new words on.
From there, we explored how the energy of that morning routine fuels a highly complex, multimodal engine in the afternoon.
Yeah, by creating audio scripts, videos, and quizzes, they ensure they're building neurological pathways for every possible learning style. And by actively reading audience comments, they create a continuous feedback loop to keep their curriculum perfectly calibrated to the student's needs.
And finally, we looked at the evening wind down where the true philosophy of learning is revealed. We saw that mastering a skill is like laying train tracks. It requires consistent daily repetitions.
And most importantly, by radically humanizing themselves with details about eating rice and going for walks, Jamie and Emily lower the student's affective filter.
Right. They prove that conquering the fear of mistakes isn't just a nice thought. It's functionally necessary for the brain to allow new information in.
It is a comprehensive, elegant system for learning, operating quietly beneath the surface of just a basic daily routine.
So, to you, the listener, think about that pile of steel rails sitting in front of you right now. Whatever complex topic or skill you're trying to master, how can you apply this little by little routine to your own life?
It's a great question to ask yourself.
How can you stop trying to build a mile of track in a single weekend and instead break the process down into daily, bite-sized actions? How can you tie your learning to the existing unbreakable habits of your morning commute or your evening wind down?
And as you think about integrating those habits into your own schedule, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, building directly on the advice Jamie and Emily gave.
What's that?
In the transcript, they specifically instructed students to listen to English audio in the morning or in the evening. Notice what they didn't say.
What do you mean?
They didn't say to practice at noon. They didn't say mid-afternoon. They specifically targeted the bookends of the day.
Why do you think they singled out those specific times?
Because the true secret to mastering a new skill might not just be about what you practice, but when you practice it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, during those specific windows, right after waking up and right before falling asleep, our brains pass through what neurologists call liminal hypnagogic states.
Okay, hypnagogic is a heavy word. Break that down for us so we can understand what is actually happening in our heads.
Think of it like a computer save screen, or when a hard drive starts defragmenting. During these transition periods between waking and sleeping, your brain waves literally change frequencies. Yeah, you are shifting from the unconscious processing of dreams to the conscious alertness of the day, or vice versa. And during this save screen process, the brain is highly elastic.
So it's more receptive.
Exactly. It is actively categorizing memories, deciding what to keep and what to discard. By placing your learning right at these transitions, you are essentially sliding the new vocabulary directly into the hard drive while it's already open and saving data.
Wow, that's wild.
Our brains are scientifically more primed to absorb and retain new information during these quiet transitions, making the very edges of our day the most valuable real estate for learning.
So tomorrow morning when you wake up, shuffle into the kitchen and reach for that first glass of water, remember. Wait. Let me rephrase that. Remember, you aren't just starting your day, you are building the foundation.
You're setting up the coat rack.
Exactly. You are setting up your mental coat rack. The only question is, what new knowledge are you going to hang on it today?